Hello, I am Michael Edwards, and this is my complex problem. I'll be delving in mostly protesting and trying to enact social change and the complex problems of enacting social change in a system that simply does not want to change. In the 1960s, we see one of the biggest marches in civil rights history. We see with Martin Luther King and all this stuff. And we also seen today similar marches with Black Lives Matter, climate change movements, and other groups. But there's been a narrative lately that these groups are somehow different, that these modern groups are bad and only want to do violence. Well, I hate to break it to you, this narrative has been the same thing said of the first group. When asked with Martin Luther King, he had an disapproval rate of 75%, worse than our last most unpopular president. Whether we know it or not, violence was largely part of a lot of the protest movements. Black Panthers was largely said to be a violent terrorist group. If we go down to its history, it is actually more of a self-defense group, following Malcolm X and the philosophy that protesters had the right to defend themselves from police violence and state violence. In fact, historians such as Kevin Grayson sees that much of the protest today bears much similarities in the same tactics and ideas of those of Martin Luther King's time. Today, protesters face many of the same problems of yesteryears. With almost 10,000 well-documented instances of police violence just from police alone, this does not counter and far-right attacks at protesters. Non-Hispanic black people have even the highest rate of police violence, while whites people experience the lowest rates, showing the great disparity between the two groups. Furthermore, the economic change hasn't really improved, with only 4% people of those living in poverty will make it out, and that rate is even lower for the minorities. Up ahead, I'm going to make a warning about slurs used. At least this was placed here until I found out that this recording system does not record audio in this computer. So, I'm going to simplify what is being said here. Pretty much what he's saying is, instead of saying the N-word repeatedly in racist things, you say bus rights, busing, state rights, or cutting taxes. And it would get so abstract that normal people don't realize it's racist, and these programs inadvertently hurt black people and other minorities. This is coming from Ronald Reagan's his famous interview and describing what's called the Southern Strategy. A strategy that is still pretty much going on to this day. One that uses dog whistles and other forms of communication to express racist policies without them sounding racist. This warning, on the other hand, is going to be a bit valid as I show some pictures of police brutality and violence throughout protesters. Starting to see some recurring themes, much of what we see. So, the question is, what happened? Why are we still here? Well, if we analyze through history what happened is we go back to what I showed before, the idea of the Southern Strategy. This happened after the 1960s by Ronald Reagan during the 1990s and 70s by Nixon. And what was their main strategy was a backlash, a form of undoing what they saw as the great mistake, i.e., civil rights. By creating laws, while on paper don't necessarily sound racist, but in effect commit racist acts. So, protesters are looking for new methods. One of them is called direct action. Direct action comes in two forms, nonviolent and violent. Nonviolent can be sit-ins, strikes, counter-economic support, and other forms of disruption. Violent direct action can be political violence, assault, arson, street blockades, sabotage, and property destruction. This one is a bit more debatable, but a lot of them are fine with destruction of property if said property is a form of harm. For example, coal plant, coal mining facility. Which brings us a good example. 10,000 German activists march on a coal mining facility, effectively shutting it down, forcing the company eventually to shut down. This was a temporary victory as eventually it got brought back up, but under another company. But it shows that change is possible with direct action. Take basic going in and causing disruption. There's many philosophers in the past has argued for this. Frederick Douglass and Michael X are some that name the suit. In fact, this quote here express very much why we should have direct action. Mainly that tyrants and our oppressors will not ever give up power willingly. There must be some kind of threat, something to push them to say it's not worth it. I'd like to thank you for listening, taking time and listening to my words. Thank you and have a good day.